In this video, I'm going to be talking about the biggest mistake most landlords and letting agents are making right now. So, knowing the law is no longer enough. What matters now is how that law is being enforced in your area, inside your properties, by each individual enforcement officer. So prevention is always cheaper than the cure. This isn't just about rogue landlords. Good, decent landlords and hard-working agents are exposed too. And that's exactly who we're here for. So, before you go any further, I need 10 minutes of your time. Because on the 27th of December 25, everything changed. And I mean everything. In my opinion, this is the biggest shake-up I've seen in the private rented sector in my lifetime. The government has changed the enforcement landscape. Local authorities have been given stronger enforcement duties and stronger investigatory powers. Tenants now have more ways than ever to challenge landlords and letting agents. At the same time, you've got no win, no fee solicitors, what I call sharks, and disrepair claims companies sharks. AI, social media, all educated and coaching your tenants about their rights and how to make claims against you. Most landlords and most letting agents are still working as if nothing has changed. They're saying, my property's just been refurbished. I've got all the certificates. I've got a letting agent. I'm with Property Mark. I'm with Nala. I've got solicitors. I've been doing this for 20 years. Listen, none of those things on their own automatically mean that your property is compliant. And that's the biggest mistake I see people making every single day. For years, people got away with things, not because they were bad landlords or bad people, right? Not because local authorities didn't care, but because quite simply they didn't have the people. Local authorities didn't have the resources, they didn't have the powers, and they didn't have the funding. Now they do. That's why this matters. That's why I've made this video, because if you don't understand what has changed, how can you possibly protect yourself? So over the next 10 minutes, I'm going to show you what changed, where your biggest risks really are, why good people don't necessarily make good landlords, and good people don't necessarily make good letting agents, and how you are getting caught out. And most importantly, what you can do today to help protect yourself, your business, and your properties. So you think you're safe. Let me ask you one simple question. If a housing enforcement officer knocked on your door tomorrow morning, would you know exactly what they'd ask out first? So the 6 questions we've already raised above. So if you can answer that right, that just leaves you exposed, right? Where do you think that they expect to find evidence? Most landlords can't answer that. Most letting agents can't answer either. And that's the one gap, is the reason Angel Moves exists. If you've just answered no to any of the 6 questions above, you are not alone. Over the last 2 years, I've sat down with landlords, letting agents, housing officers, homelessness teams, right, tenants, right, Citizen Advice Bureau, right, local MPs, right, all across the country. Right, and I wanted to understand that the things were becoming a lot clearer. And one thing has become very clear to me. A great many good landlords, or good people, not necessarily good landlords, there's a difference between the two, and good people which, and they think that they're good letting agents, are relying on assumptions that simply don't protect them anymore. So let me show you what I mean by that. So now I'm gonna go through the 10 most expensive assumptions that landlords and letting agents are making. Number 1, I've been doing this for 20 years. Everything changed on the 27th of December 25. Whatever protected you before that date does not protect you anymore now. Number 2, my property's just been refurbished. A refurbishment is not a compliance assessment. Fresh paint can sit directly over a category 1 and category 2 hazard. Number 3, my managing agent deals with all of that. You cannot sign your legal responsibility away. Under the Fitness for Human Habitation Act, the landlord stays responsible and the agent is part of the management chain. So even you as an agent have a fiduciary duty. You got away with things before, but no longer will you be able to get away with things, right? Because the government has given them new investigative powers to investigate both landlords and agents and weigh up who was most at fault and then issue fines. Right, and so they could come into your offices, they could seize records, WhatsApp messages, bank records, bank statements, accountancy details, the works. So now, right, the next one. I'm a member of a property mark or NALA. Right. So both are valuable and both can tell you what the law says, but can they tell you what your council, local authority is prioritizing, right? You know, which enforcement activities that they prioritize, or which category 1 and category 2 risk hazards are sitting inside your property right now? No, they can't. We can. So then the other one that we hear is, I've got solicitors. A solicitor cannot defend you against the hazard that physically exists inside your property. They're not housing inspectors. They're not enforcement officers. They defend you after the knock, which helped you long before it. So now we help. The other one we hear is, right, you know, I've got solicitors. A solicitor cannot defend you against a hazard that physically exists inside your property. Right, so they're giving civil fines and penalties, right? So even before it can get to court. So how a solicitor is not a housing officer, they're not a building surveyor. So, you know, the chances of them being able to defend you against a civil penalty are from slim to none. Then the other one, assumption that is made, I've got legal expenses insurance. Once an insurer learns the property wasn't fit for human habitation and carried category 1 and category 2 hazards, we are now seeing a number of claims can be declined. And you see, the thing is, right, it's common sense, right? Insurance companies, right, you know, they're allowed to purchase insurance, but they always look for reasons, right, not to pay you out, right, and pay you out. So insurance is not a substitute for compliance. Then the other assumption, right, is, right, I've got all my certificates. Gases, electricity, EPC, water, right to rent, right, that's the paperwork. The biggest risks are in the fabric of the property itself, the category 1 and category 2 hazards, right? There are far more requirements than most people realise. The National Residential Landlords Association, they put onto their website a few years ago, there's more than 168 compliance checks that a landlord and letting agent should be making. Was you aware of that? So now the other assumption that we have all the time, right, misconception, right, that we have here. My tenants never complain. Well, that's now changing. Trust me, we've seen this on a daily basis. With Section 21 gone, right, the moment, right, so now you got tenants coming out the woodworks. The moment you try to serve notice or raise the rent, a quiet tenant then all of a sudden becomes a very different one. They become a difficult tenant, right? And in many cases, they're being coached to push back. So basically, think about it yourself a second, right? You know, right? So you've got a tenant up there, so you tell them to go. They've been settled all that time. They're going to need a month deposit, month of advance rent, right? And then also they've got to pay you the last month's rent. That's 3 months rent. Right, add another couple of £1,000 on top of that, right, for moving costs, etc. If they need to get things. So if their rent was £2,000 a month, right, you know, you're looking at approximately a cost of about some 10 grand just to move. How many tenants have got that sort of money? Right, so this opens up a different can of worms, right, you know, and we see this on a daily basis. And then, right, the other assumption that we hear a lot, right, you know, so this is most expensive assumption we hear is, I've never had an inspection up until now. Right, so what makes you think I'm going to have it now? Right, that isn't a reassurance. For years, local authorities simply didn't have the officers to knock. They didn't have the resources, right? So they had maybe 1 or 2 enforcement officers in their local authority. And at that time, right, they just didn't have the powers, right? They didn't have the funding or anything, right? You know, that's all changing. I'm going to show you that in a moment. And then we hear, when we tell them everything, right, then we have landlords, right, turn around and saying, I'm going to sell anyway. I'm going to sell now. I can't take this. So the explosion is now, while the property is still in your name, and as you'll see, trying to sell can be the very very thing that triggers a problem. So exactly as I told you at the start, none of those things on their own make your property compliant. And now I'll show you how quickly that catches people out. Take the one that sounds the safest of all. I'm selling anyway. To sell with vacant possession, you serve notice on your tenant. But think about it, what you're actually asking them to do. But as I said earlier, to move they need a deposit, a month's rent up front, and often more. Removal costs on top of that. So on a £2,000 property home, that can be the best part, £8,000 to £10,000 overnight. So and how many tenants have got that sort of money sitting in a cost of living crisis? So what does a tenant do? Very often that is the exact moment a good tenant becomes a worried one. A worried tenant goes looking for help. They go on AI, they go to Citizen Advice Bureau, they go to local authority for help, temporary emergency accommodation. This is when, or then they're advised if to go to speak to a solicitor, so they go to a no fee firm. And then all of a sudden, these no fee solicitor shops, they are now trying to put in disrepair claims, rent repayment orders, etc. They'll ask them loads of questions. Or if they go to the local authorities, they don't really want them in temporary emergency accommodation, So they say go back, until the bailies come in. We can't help you, but there are laws against that. So that's a completely different thing, So you see, there's so many different ways, when now tenants with Section 21 gone, they're coming at the woodwork, so they're being coached, so they're going to first tier tribunals, so their routes of complaints are numerous now. Soon it'll be the landlord's ombudsman as well. So it all comes back down to your first level of protection is is your property free of Category 1 and Category 2 hazards? So if they go to the local authority, that's what they're going to be concerned about. Because then can we come and have a look? So if you've never had a Category 1 and Category 2 risk assessment survey done, you could be facing several cases at once. But you've sold, even before you sold a single thing. And here's the part I really want you to hear. So this is never about rogue landlords or cowboy agents. Good, decent people are exposed too, because the system changed underneath them. That is exactly why you're here. So then what I'm going to show you here is the housing world that has changed. So what has actually changed? For a long time, local authorities had maybe, as I said earlier, one or two enforcement officers, that's it. They didn't have the resources. They didn't have the powers. They had to go to court and that's it. So therefore, at best, what they do is serve an improvement notice, And that improvement notice would go to the landlord because he's the one that's on the land registry, And so, and at that time, they couldn't prove if the agent is at fault. So the easy target is the landlord. And if it did go to court, it would drag on for months, So therefore, it was just easy to give an improvement notice, As long as the work is being done, Because they have to act on it. So the work has been done, okay, case closed. So this is what happened for years and years and years. So things got quietly slipped through. So you now think about this. So local authorities are already aware of the fact, that majority of landlords and agents have never ever had a Category 1 and Category 2 risk assessment survey done, But now that so now where you got away with things, That's all changed. The government has put £60 million into local authority enforcement. For a larger authority, that can mean roughly £1 million or above, and about £35,000 to £40,000 an officer. That's around 20 new enforcement officers where there used to be one or two. And since the 27th of December 25, there's a new legal duty on councils to make sure landlords and agents are compliant. So now think about this. When National Resident Landlords Association is saying 168 compliance checks. So they can bring fines and penalties of £7,000 for initial or minor, and £40,000 for more serious, And that's per breach. And crucially, councils can keep the penalty income to fund even more officers and more enforcement activity. It's on the government's website. I'm not making this up. So that means more money, more people, more powers, and now a legal duty to use them. So at the same time, Section 21 has now gone. And your tenants are being educated by government guidance, by social media, by AI, by entire claims industries, no win no fee solicitor firms, disrepair companies, right? They're advertising directly to your tenants. And I'll be honest with you, this is my personal opinion. Some of them behave, in fact, most of them, not some of them, right? They behave like sharks. They're coaching them what to do, right? So they coach your tenants on disrepair claims, rent repayment orders of up to 24 months. So you got away with this before, not anymore. And we are seeing these cases on a daily basis. What we deal with, we're helping landlords and agents, get past these, right? And so again, we're your solicitor. So your solicitor, Property Mark, National Residential Landlords Association, your head office. How can they defend you against it? They can't. They don't know what's sitting inside your property. We can help you, right? But anyway, so again, I always say when the environment looks like this, prevention is always cheaper than the cure. So where your real risk is hiding. So where is this real risk actually hiding? Right. Most people think housing compliance is a gas certificate, electric report, EPC, smoke alarms, rent, right to rent checks, and they think that's it, finished, right? And they got away with this before. So this isn't housing compliance. And when I say anymore, it was never housing compliance before. It's just that you got away with it. You didn't know the 168 compliance checks. So these certs, that's just a fraction of it. And as I just said before, and I repeat again, the National Residential Landlords Association has said landlords and agents face more than 168 separate legal requirements, and that was before the latest reforms. There are now much more. The moment you provide a home or in return for rent, the law expects it to be fit for human habitation, and behind that sit more than 18 separate pieces of housing law, right? And the greatest risk of all is the condition of the property itself. Category 1 and Category 2 hazards under the Housing Health and Safety Rating System. And nobody has to be injured for enforcement to begin. The presence of a serious hazard can be enough. Because remember, housing law is national, but enforcement is local. One council local authority priorities damp mould, another may be HMOs licensing, another overcrowding, another goes after letting agents, another may be once an officer is standing inside your property, it comes down to their judgment. Right, so Category 2 hazards are discretionary. They still carry fines and penalties. And so it comes down to judgment. So one officer may call something a Category 2 hazard, and another one calls the very same thing a Category 1 hazard. So this is why we turn around and say knowing the law is no longer enough. What matters is how the law is being enforced in your area, inside your properties. This is where we specialize, right? This is where we specialize. So what makes Angel Music different to everybody else? So let me tell you why we're different. And I don't mean my life story. I mean why our experience actually matters to you. For more than 30 years, I've worked alongside local authorities as a financial consultant inside the public sector housing teams. Right. So that matters far more than it sounds, because I've sat on the other side of the table. I advise local authorities on where the money goes, and under real financial pressure, I worked on temporary emergency accommodations, the strategies, the policies, the budgets, so I understand the pressures local authorities are under, especially the financial ones, and how these pressures shape what they enforce. I understand enforcement from the inside. I also hold an accountancy law degree, even though I'm not a solicitor, but I can read and understand the legislation myself. And to do this properly, I didn't stop at the law books. Over the last 2 years, I've sat down with landlords, as I said earlier, landlords, letting agents, housing officers, homelessness teams, tenant support workers, housing solicitors, local MPs, heads of housing at different councils, with Citizen Advice Bureau, with Renters' Right Reform Coalition. Why? Because I had to protect the landlords and agents who are already relying on us as part of our network. And here's what all of that gives to you. We see this from every side, from the landlord side, from the agent side, and we're running letting agencies ourselves. We've run letting agents in the past, and from the tenant side, we even provide a landlord and tenant resolution service. So we didn't just jump on the renters' right bandwagon and start reciting the law. We're bringing you something completely different. Right. We make it our business to know what each local authority is actually prioritising, because every council's approach to enforcement and penalties is different, and even individual officers see things differently, right? And we keep enhancing our relationship with those local authorities, so we can bring to you what is actually happening in your area as it happens. So already, our business before this, before we started all the Renters' Right Act, and that, we were working with approximately over 80 local authorities on a daily basis, right? Where we are taking tenants from, helping them take tenants from temporary and emergency accommodation into private sector homes. So we were dealing on a daily basis with housing enforcement officers, and plus housing inspectors. So this is not new to us. So the category 1 and category 2 risk hazards, we've got substantial experience in this, right? So it's not something which we just come and done, right? And so what I want you to know is so basically, plus I'm Chartered Institute of Public Finance Accountancy trained, HHSRS trained, housing health and safety rating system trained, the same training that housing inspectors and enforcement officers take, I'm also done the National Residential Landlords Association Renters' Right trained, so we've gone through quite vigorous training, etc. as well, so we understand this very, very differently. So we're not just one of those companies which has just come about, and jumping on the Renters' Right bandwagon, so we're bringing something different to you, and I want to come back to something because it matters more than anything else, None of this is to attack landlords. Most landlords are decent people trying to do the right thing. Most letting agents work incredibly hard for their clients. The problem was never that you don't care. The problem is that the ground moved. Most people were never told that without having it realised. So we're not here to judge you. We're here to stand with you, So again, good landlords and good agents are exposed, because that doesn't necessarily make you a good person, doesn't necessarily make you a good landlord or good agent in the eyes of the law. So if you're not compliant, you then you're in danger of becoming a rogue landlord, a rogue agent. And so that is why Angel Moves, we built up our housing compliance and regulation specialist consultancy. So what's the solution? So this is never about leaving you with a problem. It's about handing you the solution. We've built training, a free membership, so you can start today. Category 1, Category 2 risk assessments, we do them. A bespoke compliance system made for, CRM system that are made for landlords and agents with those Category 1 and Category risk assessment tools built right in it. Checklists, templates, practical guidance, inspections, and one-to-one consultations whenever you need them. And we keep you up to date with what's actually happening in your area, in your local authority. So you're protected not only against enforcement, fines and penalties, but also against no-win-no-fee firms, solicitor firms, disrepair companies and disputes before they escalate. And here's a part that saves you real money. By the time you generally need a solicitor, and they can charge you £250 pounds, for a letter plus that, and normally a decent solicitor you look at £500 an hour these days. We've already prepared everything. So what we do is we've got the experience, we've got everything, so we can build up. We can give you our opinion and a professional opinion and guidance, help you create the file which at the point where you need to. So you're not starting from scratch, So we will then kind of point you to a solicitor. So we'll tell you when you need to go and see one, So what do the solicitors actually do? The experienced solicitor, do you actually think that they themselves are working on your case? In most cases, it's a junior or a trainee, that is doing their articles, They're the ones which are handling your case to begin with, So if you're thinking it's the actual solicitor will just oversee things or whatever, and that, or they just turn up to court most of the time. So So we've got all of these things in one place, so you don't have to remember it all, and you don't have to stitch it together from a dozen different websites. Our aim isn't simply to tell you there's a risk; it's to help you understand it, prepare for it, reduce it before it ever becomes an expensive legal problem. So, because everything we do is built on one idea, prevention is always cheaper than the cure. So you've got two choices. So right, so this is the first choice is you can hope that no one ever reaches your door. But trust me, right, the way this is all changed, right, it will, a final penalty, right, if you do nothing, right, it will come to bite you, hit you in some shape, form or the other. But because the law has changed more in the last year than most have ever seen in our whole lifetimes. And as I turned around and said, the National Residential Landlords Association calls it the biggest shake-up in 35 years. Honestly, it's the biggest I have ever seen. And your first and most fundamental risk isn't the paperwork, it's sitting inside your properties. Category 1 and Category 2 hazards. Local authorities already understand those hazards exist inside rented homes across the country for years. They simply didn't have the people to go out and find them. Now they do. You can feel all of that, right? You can feel all of that is unfair. Many good landlords do and agents do. But feeling that is unfair won't change the law. It won't protect you. So we're seeing landlords get irate and say, no, they're not going to do this and whatever. That's the biggest mistake you can make, right? So here's the simplest place to start. Get a Category 1 and Category 2 risk assessment survey done. Become a free member. Book a free 30-minute consultation. It costs you nothing. You have nothing to lose. Take your time on this website. There are videos on almost on everything made to help you to make sense. You see, the thing is, because this is massive, it's not small. Everything we built at Angel Move has one purpose: to help you understand today's enforcement environment, to prepare before problems arise, and to help protect you, your business and your properties. So if you're a landlord, click I'm a landlord, right? And so there's more information there. If you're a letting agent, click I'm a letting agent, and so there's more information there. And so then you'll see a video, which is I believe it's the one with 13 superpowers, right, what I call superpowers given to local authorities, and 13 superpowers and rights given to tenants, right? So because one video is not going to do it, right? One video is not going to do it. It's not going to cut it, right? So there's lots of information on there, the services that we offer, right? In that, right? So please take advantage of the free consultation, right? And that way, and get yourself booked onto a Category 1 and Category 2 risk assessment survey done whilst they're at the prices that they are, because they will not be with this prices for long. It's only this month only. Sorry, this week only, I beg your pardon. So protect yourself before somebody else starts asking the questions. Right, so we just thank you very much for this.